Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second OnRamp workshop. It is my pleasure as your host, as OnRamp's founder and residence, to convene these weekly activities for you as we bring in subject matter experts, innovators, and thought leaders in innovation to discuss with you their approaches, their understanding, and their experiences in doing a range of things as is related to starting a business, building innovation, developing and designing products, and really participating effectively in this growing technology economy. Our purpose here on our weekly workshops is to give you the opportunity to not just listen, but also learn and well as hear new information that you can leverage that's going to help you accelerate your startup. So the whole goal of the Science Center in launching OnRamp is to really build a much more aligned community in Philadelphia region for a startup ecosystem where we have a destination to come to not only hear from experts, but share our own experiences. We look for these sessions to be very interactive. The facilitator will go over what their intent is once I introduce tonight's facilitator. Each week will be someone different. But each time, the opportunity for you to be able to gain a greater understanding and to get some nuggets, as I like to identify it, that helps you along your startup journey. So tonight, I'm excited to introduce our expert facilitator tonight, Brittany Jenkins, who is an amazing, dynamic young woman who has an amazing career besides being an engineer, besides having worked for Facebook, besides having developed products. She has also too built her own successful startup. So I'll let Brittany give you further information about her background as we get into discussion. But before we go there, two things. I want to remind everyone that at the end of the program, in July, we'll be having our pitch competition, and minimum eligibility to participate is that you would have to have completed 6 workshops. There will be additional requirements going forward, but the baseline is having attended at least 6 makes you eligible to participate. So we'll get into further details over the next couple of weeks as we begin to fine tune what that event will look like. And the winner of that pitch competition is going to get $5,000 that evening. In addition to that, every week I have a poll question. This is a great opportunity that we see in terms of bringing startups like yourself together in terms of building or looking at how we further leverage Philadelphia's founder ecosystem. I like to get some information from you to gauge, to help us better understand, not only what we're doing right, what we may need to do differently as we look to build and strengthen what we're doing here in the region, especially here at the Science Center. So tonight's question, Nat, would you put it up for me, please? So tonight's question that I'm looking for everybody to complete before the end of the workshop is over. You don't have to rush into it now, but tonight's question is, why did you decide to become an entrepreneur? Why did you decide to become an entrepreneur? You have 10 options to answer. Please take the time to complete this, before the end of the session. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany. Brittany?
Yes.
Show is yours.
Thank you. Okay, let me get my setup together. I'm gonna share my screen. How can I just do full screen? I've never seen whiteboard before. I guess that's something new, but oh, no, sorry. I'm just gonna share this then. I'll just share the Chrome. Alrighty. So I'm gonna put this in full screen in a moment and then we'll go from there. And hopefully it'll keep, yes, you guys are still on the screen. I always like to keep everybody on the screen while I'm like presenting so that I can still kind of see you guys while I'm talking. So thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Mr. Webster, for having me. I really appreciate you guys for, providing the platform, making my EdTech startup, We Are Tech, a part of the community of startups that are partnered with this program. I'm really excited to share what I know. Mr. Webster, I really appreciate you for having me here. So my name is Brittany Jenkins. I have an edtech startup called We Are Tech, and my startup focuses on engaging students and communities of color with technology. So we provide digital literacy resources, and my whole goal with We Are Tech is simply to provide a conduit for the tech industry to funnel resources into communities of color. Today, I'll be talking about building and launching a product, also known as an MVP. And I have a lot of experience in this. I've been building products for, I want to say like 10 years now. I started during college, just, wanting people to understand what I'm trying to create. And that being at the basis has allowed me to have confidence in just diving right in, sketching products, creating them. And I have a lot of insight on tons of different resources and platforms that you can use. My background is predominantly in app development. So if anybody out there is trying to make apps, I'm really great at showing you what tools and platforms you can use to make apps with code or without code. And I'll be sharing some of those resources today in our presentation. So I want to open up the chat real quick so that I can see what you guys are sharing. And then I'm going to skip to the next slide. All right. So I will start off this presentation by just going over some background information about me. Then I will dive into the importance of creating an MVP and things that you should know before creating an MVP. And then I will touch on how to actually make one. And throughout the presentation, feel free to drop questions in the chat. And I'll also make time for you guys to ask questions so that we can, touch on things as they emerge. So are you guys ready for me to start? Can I get like a thumbs up or like some, you good in the chat? Cool. Okay, all right, cool. So I started with taking things apart and putting them back together. I love technology. One thing about my background, I also was a STEM teacher. I started off actually in the Bronx, I started teaching, but I recently used to teach at Simon Gratz High School. So I love, hey, I see the thumbs up. Okay, there we go. Good old Gratz. North Philly, what's up? So I started off really taking things apart. I loved playing Tetris on the Game Boy. Whenever my mom would buy me gifts as a kid during Christmas, the Easy Bake Oven, anything, I would just take it apart. And I was curious to figure out what was underneath and what'll happen if I put it back together? Can I change it? Can I reconfigure it? Can I make something different? And that curiosity, I think, really set the foundation for me to become an algorithmic thinker. As I got older, one of my favorite hobbies is to create collages. So as I got older, I realized that I'm growing into an algorithmic and strategic thinker, having this mindset of taking things apart, figuring out how they go back together. And even with collages, like cutting pictures out and putting them in like a specific place so that it can make a cohesive design. At a very early age, and even going into high school, I learned that is at the foundation of how I think. I didn't know though that how I was developing that algorithmic and that strategic thinking, it was creating a foundation for me to be an innovator. And innovation, I've managed to create a lot of things just from people, just honestly for me wanting people to understand what I wanted to create. Someone says I cannot see the presentation. Is my screen sharing okay?
Yep, I can see it. Hold on, I'll chat with you.
Okay. I'm sorry that you can't see the presentation, but I will be sharing out a link at the end of this presentation where you can download the presentation that I'll be presenting today. So my algorithmic thinking that I've, had been growing as a child, it really equipped me to think through ideating different concepts and solutions. So what you're looking at in the background here are snapshots of different products that I've made. These are very abstract, and honestly, when you're creating an MVP, a lot of products are always going to look like that. It's always going to be that early iteration, or it's always going to be that abstract iteration of what you think you want to create until you put it into someone's hands and you figure out what you need to create. And these products that you're seeing, these are abstract ideations of a concept that I came up with in college to, live stream concerts. Before live streaming was really a thing, I just used to produce concerts during college. And I figured, we should turn this into an app and curate this experience. So during that time, I made a lot of user interfaces to figure out how can people stitch together content? How can people curate their own content? How can we present the data behind that content? And throughout that process, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I wanted to create something. And from that process, I was able to cultivate a lot of skills like graphic design, product development. Oh, thank you, Zave. Um, tons of web development. What else? App development, market research, software development. All of these skills just kind of emerged from me wanting to make something. And in order to make that thing, I had to adopt a lot of these skills. So I know some people out there, it may seem challenging when you're trying to create something, but if you commit to the process, you'll get something out of it other than making that end product. Okay, thank you, Natalie. So in that process of just trying to create and trying to get people to see what I was trying to present to them, I managed to become a strong innovator, a person who, once I think in my mind what I want to create, I'm able to just instantly produce it. And even if it's not the final product, I have the confidence to seek where I need to, go, like who do I need to talk to? What kind of tools do I need to use in order to, create what I'm trying to, create? And that is what's at the core of product development. That's what's at the core of being an innovator. You have to be very scrappy, and really maintain that confidence of, you know what, this is what I want to do, and just keep going for it. Because there will be a lot of people who will tell you, no, you shouldn't do that. But as long as you stick to it, it'll eventually work out, and you'll get so much more out of it than you never knew that you would before. So innovation, it truly has equipped me to become successful and confident. What you're seeing on the screen are some of my most recent innovations. On the bottom right, it's an app called Rooted. As soon as the pandemic hit, me and a friend of mine, we decided to make an app where we could help nonprofits gain access to like public funding. And we created that because we were inspired by the protest. We noticed just the communal aspect of people bringing waters, bringing resources to these protests. So we randomly just quickly made this app where we highlighted tons of nonprofits and created a way where people could immediately pay a lot of these nonprofits that were putting on social events. Some of these other innovations, like here at the top, this is a VR experience that I created. And at the bottom right is a innovation that I'm currently working on for a live streaming festival. It's a media product. So innovation is very, sometimes you might feel very scattered, but at the end of the day, it'll all come together. I think that is something that I'm learning right now in this era. Like, I didn't know COVID was going to happen. I didn't know that my skills would all come into alignment at this time. All I knew is at the foundation, I wanted to make something, and I knew what I wanted to make. And what it's turned into is me having a lot of skills to contribute. So I'm really happy to be here with you guys to share what I know. Roderick said, are you developing products or services? What are you selling? So I can share more about that with We Are Tech when we get to the Q&A. And I can also share We Are Tech's company profile so that you can have more insight. But right now, I'm not selling any services. I'm focusing more on products and programs. So I could definitely share more with you. And also, this is not a business pitch. I just want to just share with you guys the insights that I have about creating products. Okay. And also, I think one thing I want to touch on, that's a good question, because making a service can be a very different development process than making a product. And making your product be the service can be an even more complex process. So yeah, let's pin that question because I want to touch on that when we get to the Q&A, which might actually be after this slide. So why I'm here with you today, again, not a business pitch. I just like sharing what I know about innovation to help people, empower themselves the way I have. I really enjoy using my skills with graphic design or building apps because it gives me an outlet. I think a lot of people see these skills as valuable and they're like, oh, you could be, you can make a lot of money. But for me, it's more so an outlet, a way for me to leverage, me being that young kid who loved making collages. I now make collages out of graphic designs with web development or app development. So I'm happy to be here with you guys so that I can share what I know and answer any questions that you guys have about the process that you're in. So I think, yep, this slide is the question time. So does anybody have any specific questions to anything that I went over about my background? I see one right here and I can unmute you. I saw you like physically raise your hand. There we go. Hi.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is when a product idea hits you, what you think hits you first? Is it like you see a hole in the marketplace, you go, I could do something there? Or you think this would be something cool to build and I'll find the market afterwards?
I'm glad you asked that question because I've had experience with that, like a little bit of both. So as I shared before, when I was in college, I used to produce concerts. And when I would be at these music festivals, I would look at the big screen in the back and I would see them projecting content there. And I thought about the market. So it's kind of like the ladder, like you see the market, you're like, okay, there's something missing here. And I started to envision, I'm like, given, the previous experience with Napster and iTunes, how the music industry changed to the point where people rely on live music festivals for revenue, at some point it's going to shift to the point where there's going to need to be a different way to monetize, this engagement between the artist and the fan, or with this digital content that is coming to the forefront. So to answer your question, yes, it's you can see a market opportunity, or you can envision, I can make something that can address this certain, need. But also it can start from you just wanting to, make something cool. So I had experience with that as well, like knowing a lot of artists and knowing like that they weren't, not every artist can charge $200,000 to be booked at a festival. And not every artist has 1 million followers on Instagram to monetize posts. So that kind of inspired knowing different artists and feeling like, I want to make something for them. I want to help artists out. That also inspired me to, to innovate products that could help them independently monetize their content. So it's chicken and the egg. It's a little bit of both. If you're deeply embedded into a community and you know their needs, that can inspire you to innovate. And again, if you're deeply embedded into a community and you just are passionate about what that community represents, you can celebrate them with, with an idea that comes to mind, whether you have the market opportunity or not. Let's see. I want to get to Roderick's in a moment, but I do see one. Thoughts on building an MVP. When you are someone with an idea who needs to work with a developer and you don't have a background in web app development, that was me. What resources, platforms could the non-developer access to connect with developers? So someone asked, if you don't have a background in app development, web development, how can you position yourself basically to get into the same circles as developers? One, be here. So programs like this, like OnRamp, tapping into the startup community, that is the first step that you need to take. Because even if we don't have a bunch of developers on this call, advocates like Mr. Webster, Miss Natalie, like these are people who know the startup community here. So they'll be able to connect you to developers. One thing that I used to do a lot, and it's kind of hard with virtual, is to go to hackathons. I used to go to hackathons all the time as like a designer or a founder, and they automatically pair you with developers. So does anyone, I won't even actually really, if you don't know what a hackathon is, it's basically an event where people in the tech industry gather to create something. And a lot of times, major companies sponsor these hackathons because they want to see what people are going to create with their technology. So for example, Google can, make their, code or their source code available for a hackathon because they want to see what people are going to build with this piece of code that they provided. Or they even try to recruit from these events. But as a non-developer, these types of events are perfect to go to because you get to meet people who know how to code really, really well. And you get paired with these people. It's like a networking event, but highly concentrated and focused on building and product development. So those are my two main suggestions. Come to startup community events and definitely go to hackathons. And there's actually a website, it's kind of like Slack. I think in Slack, if you go to Slack, there's like different groups that you can go to try and connect with developers. But there's another platform, and it's slipping my mind right now, but it's like a forum, there's like a forum platform where, technically, there's tons of websites that have networks of developers. And you can also find, talent on different job-based apps like Fiverr, has a lot of freelancers. So you can do your research in that way to find people. But those types of platforms, sometimes the hiring platforms, it can be challenging for you to identify whether or not whether or not things are fair. Because if you're contracting somebody from across the globe and it's not like a real connection with them, you don't really know if they're overcharging you for what you're asking them to do. So it's way smarter to start with startup communities like this and hackathons so that you can build a more personable connection with those developers. I don't see any more questions coming in the chat, nor do I see anyone raising a hand. So I'll touch on somebody. Terrence?
I have a question. In terms of, have you worked with developing tech to optimize businesses? You mentioned, like you can use it for like several things, whether you want to create a product or if you want to help yourself build it, like deliver a service. But like the actual, I guess, administrative work that needs to be done for a business to like optimize like the business functions. Where does that fall in?
So that's a good question. And I'll actually tie that to Broderick's question. That all starts with the MVP. That starts with you determining what are the core features and settings that need to be in this product in order to make this product valuable to the person that I think wants to use it. Once you determine what is going to go into that product or that first iteration, you should put it in people's hands, and then you determine, okay, this worked, this is what they like, this is what they didn't like, this is what they need or what they don't really need. And from there, you determine how you're going to build out your business, which is called commercialization or costing. So once you've like built out your MVP, you put it in people's hands and you have a proof of concept, then you are able to build an infrastructure around what you're creating. And honestly, that's when you shouldn't really try to start building out the administration behind a product during the MVP process, because you could waste a lot of money. Like, it's better to understand the value of what you have at the core and then scale that than to try to make a whole big corporation around something, because you don't really know if people value it yet or how much they value it. You don't really know how much someone's willing to pay for what you have to offer in order to have a cost structure for what you're creating. And investors, like, no matter how pretty your pitch deck is, no matter how many bells and whistles your product has, people, when it comes to you asking them for their money, they are only going to pay attention to cost and the market opportunity. Is the price that you're, charging for this and the cost of you running your business, do you really understand it? And is the market opportunity worth it? You know, does it really actually fit? And do we see that your team is the team that's capable of, you know, maximizing the potential of that market opportunity? Did that answer your question, Terrence? Nene? I think I'm gonna ask you to unmute. But I see some other people in the chat. I have to hire a tech person for networking and low-level tech work. Where do I begin? I'm not technologically inclined. Startup communities like this and hackathons. That's where you find tech-oriented talent. Terrence, do you want?
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, finding the mute button was not easy initially.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think so. It seemed like where you're getting at is like, yeah, I can include all these things into, you know, a wireframe to like, you know, illustrate an idea. But like, it might take several iterations to ultimately get to like, all right, I have this like very fine idea of what I would like some tech to look like.
Yes.
But like, would it be functional if I've thought about this for too long by myself, so I need to like involve others, you know, to see, you know, how functional it is, how useful it is, you know, for, you know, the marketplace.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Yeah, I think what you shared was valuable. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, the key is to put it in people's hands. And to touch on what Robert was talking about, he was asking, are you developing products or services? What are you selling? A product can be a service. A product can provide a service to your end user. And, you know, it's really just, it comes down to this important thing that we're talking about, your MVP, your minimal viable product. You have to understand what people want. Because at the end of the day, a business is all based on the why. Why do I want to pay for this? Why do I want to use this? And building a strong MVP, it does that for you. So I'll move on to some key vocabulary that we're gonna need to know. And thank you, Shelly, for sharing. I see an awesome resource in the chat, devpost.com. Thank you for sharing that. So for today's workshop, there's some key vocabulary that we're going to need to know. I've kind of said a couple of these terms already. The first term that you've heard me share a couple times is MVP. So an MVP is the minimal viable product of which you are seeking to build. And it includes the bare minimum features of your idea. So the whole goal is to present it as a proof of concept. So an MVP it's literally the bare minimum. It should be no more than 1, 2, 3 features. Like it should not have everything. If you are making something and you're like, oh, this is everything I want my product to be, it's not your MVP. Like it's not. Your MVP should be the one thing that your product should do no matter what. For real. It should be the one thing that your product should do no matter what. It should not be everything you want your product to do. It should be the one thing it should be able to do. It should be that one thing that provides value to its end user. And rapidly prototyping, so I'm skipping over one, rapidly prototyping unearths that. You know, you can start off by building, you know, this is what I want my product to be. Do that. Build it quickly and move on and put it in people's hands so that you can get answers or you get insight and feedback on what is really valuable to people. And companies have done that before. They've kind of thrown the kitchen sink at things and then they just put it out there to see what the market response is. And then based off that market response, they decide, okay, out of all these 10 features, everybody that we surveyed or that we put this product in front of, they like that one feature. And then you decide, okay, that's going to be the one product that we build around or the one feature that we build around, and we'll determine how viable it is. And viability, it is all about meeting a market opportunity. That is what, in my opinion, I know Mr. Webster, you might have a full-on, you know, definition of what viability is, but for me, viability, it comes down to meeting that market opportunity and doing it in a, you know, cost-effective way and doing it in a way that you can deliver on. Because if you come up with the, you know, solution and, you know, you see that, okay, this actually meets the market opportunity, but if you can't deliver on it, then your business isn't viable. I see something in the chat from Zaves. It has Reed Hoffman always says, if you are not embarrassed by your first product, you launched too late. That's right. That's right. Yep. If you're not embarrassed by that first product, then you launched too late. Okay. So
Hey, Brittany,
yeah.
let me just add one point there, and this is all exceptional. I was involved with a group of investors who bought some technology from Lucent some years ago, and the head of commercialization at Lucent Technologies, which has been developing this and selling technology into the marketplace really for decades, if not centuries. They used to determine a product's viability based on what they estimated to be somewhere between 60 and 65% market ready. Their position was this, is that their goal was to get it to market as fast as it can, just as long as it had some viability. And what they wanted the other 30 and 35% to be determined by the market. So they didn't want anything that they viewed that was beyond that. And they pushed technology out, especially in the telecommunication area, for decades under that strategy. And of course, we know made billions. So when you talk about MVPs and market viability, we always want things to be perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about the comment that Zabe just made. And if you're late to market, it doesn't matter how great your product is.
Yep.
It will never go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of determining viability, what you want to be able to do, as you've been describing here, is identify something that has some viability and let the market direct you next on where to go with it.
Yeah. And to add to that, it is also valuable. Like, I remember when I first started off as an entrepreneur, I was probably like a sophomore in college, I think in like tech entrepreneurship. That's kind of when I got into it. And I remember being very nervous, trying to find development talent. And I just started to just started making, even if it was just sketching. Like, I remember finding apps that would take pictures that of anything that you've drawn, and they would allow you to, connect those pictures together just to simulate an app. And one thing I want to say, like, there's value in that process because you gain so many skills. Like, I just want to encourage people not to get hung up on where you are now and like how challenging it may seem because you're trying to get your idea out there and it may not be what you want it to be. Really commit to the process because timing is everything. Like, timing is everything. And I see your hands, Dave, and you want to keep going, to be aligned with divine timing. And also, you'll find that you've acquired so many skills throughout this process that when the time is right, you'll be ready to receive, that blessing, and you'll be able to instantly respond to the market. Like, I couldn't call it. I really couldn't call it for a lot of the things that I've been able to accomplish, especially within, this pandemic. But it was just a matter of staying committed to the process of trying to make something and accumulating all these skills over time, and it equipped me to instantly be able to make things and put them out. Dave, I saw your hand. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, just a quick add-on. I think one of the things as a business leader that you have to do is create excitement about your product. And if you have a good idea and you can create that passion and share that passion and get someone else excited, and then you share that around the marketplace, you don't keep it in your back pocket, but you share it around in your community, you will find a developer who's going to go, my God, that's a good idea. Let me help. And you'll find a marketer who's going to say, my God, that's a good idea. Let me help. And that's how you build your team.
Thank you. You're right. You're right. And that gives you insights. That gives you insights on what you should be doing and how to go about it. It really does build the infrastructure behind your business. And I touch on that in this presentation. I don't want to mess up your name, Shakina, I believe, Shakina, you mentioned you're currently raising funds for a prototype. So how do you raise funds for a prototype? One thing I want to say, if you're building an app, you don't need to raise funds for a prototype because there's so many products out there that can help you build apps without code. If you're trying to build a physical product, there are also 3D design. There are 3D design platforms out there where you can make your product. You can really design it out, and then you could, purchase a 3D printer and print out those pieces, and put them together. You really don't need to raise money to build a prototype. Like, you could really bootstrap and, build for a very minimal cost. Because I remember being at that stage and thinking I needed to hire people. And, I think big companies, could and should do that because they need to build quicker. But like, if you're, bootstrapping, the goal, I don't want anybody spending tens of thousands of dollars on a product, even if it's physical. I think someone touched on this in the first workshop, how they said, if you're building something physical, go to Home Depot, go to Michael's, like go to all these different places and be very scrappy. Find ways to put things together instead of trying to spend on your prototype. I got another question. What's the balance between sharing? This is a good one. This is a good one. What's the balance between sharing your idea versus sharing too much that other people work on it? So my experience with this comes with growth. It really does, because I think at a certain point, you'll know how to talk about what you're doing without talking about what you're doing. Like, you'll know how to talk to people about market opportunities. You'll know how to talk to people about a certain, space in the market without sharing, this is what I'm doing. You can talk about things that are relevant to your product without giving up your product. And with regards to, building or working with other people, just have them sign an NDA. One of my mentors, she said to me at an early age, she's like, I don't give out a thought for free. So have an NDA. You're gonna have to share your ideas, you're gonna have to share them. So just have an NDA. You can, that there's templates for that, but also be mindful of when you do, approach that. But there's ways, as you grow and talk more about your product in the space, you'll find that there are ways to talk about your product without giving up, what you're doing. How can you spell, how do you spell the acronym for the agreement? NDA, just NDA, or mutual NDA. That's one that I usually use with people that I'm contracting to, build with me, a mutual NDA. I'll drop it in the chat. Okay, thank you. Oops, hold on. Sorry, y'all, I'm typing all fast. I swear I can't type and talk at the same time. All right, so the last bit of vocabulary is product development. So we've mentioned this term before. Product development is, basically the series of phases that you and or your team will work through to complete the creation of a product. Now, I wanted to share this definition mainly to share the phases of product development. NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. Just want to touch on that because somebody asked that in the chat, and I'm typing that. So when you're trying to find NDAs, just Google non-disclosure agreement template, and you can use that. You can take the text, put it in your own document, brand it with your own, logo. That's what I like to do. And people will be like, okay. And there's a platform, Docusign. Docusign is a good platform to use. So you can upload that document onto Docusign and just send people your NDA. And a lot of investors take you more seriously when you use Docusign. So the phases that I want to touch on with product development, they are ideation, you do your research, they're the planning phase, the prototyping phase, sourcing, and then the launching phase. And what I'll touch on later on in the presentation is mainly the launching phase, and also why it's important for you to understand this. Like, you really should understand the phases of product development so that you can be strategic about what you want to get out of your development process. So if you know, if you want to just make something because you want to see what people are going to respond to, maybe you might want to lean heavier into the ideation part of it. Or if you're trying to make something to see how viable it is so that you can push for investment, then you might want to lean deeper into the launch portion of the phase so that you can really understand the cost of what you're creating and the particulars of the infrastructure behind the business that that will support that product. So are we, I know we've been chopping it up a bit. Are we ready for the next slide, everybody? Can I get, okay, thank you. All right. And let me know if I'm talking too fast, because sometimes I can, you know, kind of. So why is it important to build an MVP? As an entrepreneur, I think my most important reasoning behind making the MVP is to build confidence. A lot of times these startup communities, they focus a lot on the hard cut and dry stuff. Like, here's how you make something, here's how you do this, connect with this person, here's how you get funding. But at the end of the day, it takes confidence to get up in front of people and to talk about what you're doing. And I find that every time I've made an MVP, it made me that much more confident in what I was doing, because it simply challenged me to talk. It challenged me to continue to share what I was doing, and it challenged me to, you know, be more precise and be more clear on what it is that I'm creating and why I'm creating it and why it's of value. So I always like to say confidence is a premium. So whether your product is where you think it should be or it isn't, just start talking about it to people, you know. Start with your family, start with your dog, start with somebody, start talking about it, because you're going to need that confidence. And the sooner you start building that confidence, the better, because investors, they're pretty straightforward and they could be no joke. They could be very intimidating. So you want to build your confidence. Another important reason why it's important to build a MVP is to build out your support system. So I'm going to have slides that follow this, that dive deeper into these points. But I think somebody touched on it. Terrence, he asked, you know, how the administrative piece, the building your MVP is going to unearth what kind of administrative tasks, what types of people you need to hire. Like, it's going to reveal that to you, because you're going to be able to identify, this is what it takes to make this product work. And along the process, as you put this product in front of people, you'll make relationships with people that are going to be a part of your support system. So the last reason that I'm going to touch on is that building an MVP, it fosters validated learning. Validated learning is a term that I learned about from a book that I read that I will share with you in a moment. And it's basically the act of getting getting feedback that can inform your next step. So you never want to waste time. You never want to, you know, just do something to do it. You want to do something and receive something back from it. Yeah, you do not waste time and money. Exactly. So you want to do something so that you can get some understanding about what you're doing in return, so that the next step moving forward, it's informed by that next decision. You know, kind of like when you're walking down the street, you wouldn't just, you wouldn't just step on something. You would pay attention to the signs. So I'll dive a bit deeper into my first reason as to why, why it's important to build an MVP. And I think I kind of elaborated on it a bit much previously, but I'll dive a bit deeper to give context to some of these pictures that are in the background and how it relates to my background. So I know you guys can see, everybody has vision. I'm a Black woman. And, building, a lot of times innovation is not, a lot of times, and people don't liken innovation to, Black people or women. That's just the unfortunate part of the tech industry. It's dominated by white men. And, it takes a lot of courage. It really, really takes a lot of courage to get in front of people and to be confident in who you are as a person, and in order to even be confident in what you're presenting. So all backgrounds aside, just confidence is key. And that is my most important reason for creating MVPs. It's really been a confidence builder for me. And it also, you know, builds people's confidence in you, honestly, because as a leader, people will see you as a leader for you being the person who's taken the risk to create something and to get up and to talk about it. And a lot of these pictures that are back here, these are from prominent Black innovators. So, you know, these are from people from like the 60s, the 1800s, you know. Yeah, Garrett Morgan, exactly. Garrett Morgan, he made the traffic light. So I put all these innovations back here because I just wanted to touch on, like, you know, these innovations that you see in the background, these are from Black people from as early as the 1800s to as recent as the 1960s. And I could only imagine the things that they were up against during those times. And they still, you know, managed to gain the courage and the confidence to make something and to put it in front of somebody. So that's what, you know, innovation can do for you. And also it could get people to understand what you're creating. Like, I think we all know that because we're all trying to get people to understand what we're doing. But when you make an MVP, it makes it more specific so that people can know, like, oh, this is what I can contribute to what you're working towards. Which leads me to my next point. Building your MVP, it helps build the support system that you're gonna need to make your product work, such as your network, your infrastructure, your supply chain. This picture that I have in the background is of the business model canvas. Has anybody ever heard of the business model canvas before? Cool, I see one hand, hi. Okay, cool, two hands, good. This is a book that huge fan. I really like the Canvas series too. It's very engaging. I love the illustrations. I really like how fluid the book is. And you know, creating your MVP does this. It makes your model for you. So I think what happens a lot in entrepreneurship is that people, they get it, they come up with an idea, they're like, I want to make a business. And then they think about all the things they're going to need to make that business work, which is good, but you still have to understand what people want. Like, what is that? Like, what is the product? And then you determine all the things that make that business work, all the partnerships, all the suppliers, all of the, you know, all the different costs that go into it. So it's very important that you start here with making that minimal viable product before trying to think through what the business is. Product first, always put product at the forefront, because when you do, all of that's going to come to you. You know, all the people that are going to help you develop it, it's going to come. All the people who can run that business for you, it'll come. All the advisors that you need, it will all come from you focusing on the product and putting it in people's hands. And then I have, I think, one more slide on this piece, and then we'll do another brief Q&A. So validated learning. MVPs, they help innovators validate what they've learned about their product's viability with feedback. So a book that I'm currently reading right now is called The Lean Startup. If anybody went to business school, this is like the Bible. Like, if you went to an entrepreneurship program, this is the book they push on everybody. And I never really read it back in school. I just started reading it now because I feel like it's going to be of the most value to where I currently am. But in this book, the author Eric Ries talks about validated learning, and he talks about how it's more important to validate what you learned and what effort you put forward than to just keep going. Like, really capture the data on what you did when you made something. And it'll also help you understand, like, did I just waste time doing this? Could I have found this information a different way with less time and less money? Nefertari, it's called The Lean Startup. Somebody in the chat asked, what's the name of the book? So it's called The Lean Startup, and it's also, there's a picture of it right here on the bottom right side of the screen. It's by Eric Ries. But in this book, when he talks about validated learning, he really talks about making sure you're not wasting time. So you don't want to, hey, ordered, okay, you know what, Eric Ries should cut me a check. Yep. So somebody just ordered this book, he should cut me a check. So, you know, he talks about not wasting time, you know, like, could you have determined this is what you need to build in a different way, you know? So going back to raising money for a prototype, you may not even need to build a prototype. You might just need to make a survey, you know? You might just only need to make a survey and then put the survey out to the people that you think are going to be your customers and ask them, you know, what do you think about this? You know, what kind of products are you currently using? If you had something that did this, would you buy it? How much would you pay for it? Like, there are a lot of things that you can do that are kind of like an MVP in terms of like gathering data without actually like building a bunch of stuff out. And that is at the core of what validated learning is. It's all about being able to validate what it is that you just did. And once you do get information on what you just did, cutting down the amount of time or resources you're wasting. Like, if you find out after building something, we got this bit of information, could we have gotten this information with less effort? Okay, let's do that less effort then. Because entrepreneurship, it can be very draining. It can be very, very draining. And, you know, any way in which you can cut down, you know, that extra effort, that drain, do it. All right. So, before I get into some of these examples, does anybody have any questions? I do want to share some examples of MVPs. No questions? All right. So Mr. Webster wanted me to share some examples. So I'm going to share some examples of MVPs. And some of them I think you're going to be intrigued by, because I learned something new as I was making this presentation. And I'm sharing these examples so that you guys can see, like, big companies. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, we tend to look at what other companies are doing and we're like, yo, I want to do that. I want to be that boss. I want to be that person, or I want to do that thing. But it's best to understand that, where did they start? You know, Amazon didn't start off as this huge, huge marketplace online. Amazon started as a bookstore. It started off as an online bookstore only selling books. Like, it did not start off selling all these different products. It started off selling one thing, just books. And it's interesting because, you know, they found after selling books, oh, okay, we could sell some other things. Or there may have been something in the process of them running this website that was selling books. They might have found that, hey, why are we selling books when people do everything on their phone anyways? Like, we don't really need to sell books. So that could have led them to differentiate and identify that, well, we need to sell other products because that's what's actually moving online. So a couple of these examples that I'm sharing, I found them on this website called firstversions.com. So if you want to explore some of these, first versions of products for some inspiration, just go to firstversions.com. I know the link I just shared in the chat is not hyperlinked, but you can copy and paste it. So I do have like 4 more examples. So my next example is Facebook. As Mr. Webster shared, I used to work here, and it was a really remarkable experience working for Facebook. I got to see a lot of products go into development and really watch a big company like that rapidly prototype. And they do it in a way where it's like, it's built, you know? So, you know, those companies, they move pretty swiftly. But yeah, Facebook, it started off, I'm pretty sure a lot of us know this, it started off as a college network where some kids just literally wanted to connect all the other students across all the Ivy League colleges. And we all know that the founder, you know, what's hot or not? Hakeem said hot or not. I don't know. You can elaborate. I'd love to see you elaborate on that in the chat. But yeah, Facebook started off as a college network, and it started off only as, oh, you said, isn't that where? Yes, Hakeem, yes. That's exactly where it started. It started off as a college network where people were rating people. They were rating, like, is that person cute? Is that person single? Like, it started off as kind of like a dating college network or platform website. And since then, like, it's expanded. But one thing I want to talk about, yeah, right, they created Tinder. One thing I want to talk about though is like, what's at the core of your business is going to come from your MVP. So one thing they used to always say was the mantra while working at Facebook is that we're all about being open and connected. And that translated into all the products that came about. So like Instagram, Facebook Marketplace, all those products, they're all built because Facebook's mantra is to make sure people are open and connected. And that kind of is like what happened at the core of the platform. The platform was all about connecting people. Like, it doesn't need to, be something where people can pay their bills. It doesn't need to be something where people can like and comment. And it didn't need to be any of that. All it was a platform where people could share a profile so that it could put them in a network where they were connected with other people. So in these other examples, I'll share a bit more about that. Like, the MVP is just so important. It really, really is. Like, it's going to set the foundation for how your product can expand down the line. Next one, Airbnb. So Airbnb, when Airbnb first started, it was a concierge. It was basically a platform, a website. It wasn't even an app. It was a website where you can find cheap accommodations. That was it. It wasn't even a place where people could sign up and host or any of that. It was just a platform where you can search, I want to go stay here. What are all the different options that I have? And actually that's still at the core of what Airbnb is now, but the model of how Airbnb functions is completely different. Before, they weren't having people put their properties up for people to stay in them. They were just pulling together data on the internet that could share with people the different hotel options basically that they could find. But eventually, after facilitating this, they changed their model and they determined, okay, we're still gonna give people options for how they can be accommodated, but how about we allow people to sign up to offer their space as a space where they can, where other people can book. And that's how the product has evolved. So that's just another example of, like, at its core, it was all about accommodations, but the model of it changed. And who would have known? I don't know if Airbnb could have came out with how it is now. I don't know if it could have came out back then as a platform where it couldn't. Yeah, somebody shook their head. It couldn't. People weren't even that trusting of people to have them in their houses. Exactly, right? They were worried about putting themselves in danger. Quick sidebar. It's funny how nowadays, I forgot where it was. It was like a meme or something, but all the things that our parents told us, growing up, like, don't talk to strangers, don't, get in a car with strangers. All these things they told us as kids, like, don't do this. Nowadays with technology, you're willing to be in somebody's house, somebody's car, you're willing to meet up with somebody to buy something. Yeah, the internet. So so I have two more. I think I have two more examples. Yahoo. So Yahoo started off kind of like Google, actually. It started off as a platform where you can do web search. You can search for something, and their whole goal was to just give you links that were related to what you were searching for. Uh-oh, that's some sound. But yeah, Yahoo, it was literally a landing page where the whole point was to aggregate website links and share them with people. And now Yahoo is a whole web service provider. It provides email, it provides the weather, it provides news. Like, it's so much more than what it was before, when it was just all about filtering and providing a search engine. So let's see this one's my favorite one. I didn't know this. I learned this just to make this presentation. And some of my OGs, original gangsters on the call, y'all probably know, but I didn't know this. Apple was a kit form computer. Back in 1969, they put this out, I think, or 64. I didn't know that Apple was a kit form computer. It was not something where it's completely different now. Like, now I think with Apple, Apple has it's so in tune with human design that people don't even think about how they're navigating an Apple device. It's just so intuitive to how they think that they just pick it up and they start using it. But back then it was a kit form computer where the whole thing was put it together, like be a technologist, buy our kit, make your own computer, put it together, and now you have innovation in your life. And to touch on like, yeah, Raspberry Pi, but to touch on like the brand of Apple at its core, I think that kit form branding has been translated into people having a suite of Apple products. Because Apple users, we're addicted to Apple. I know I am. Like, I'm not buying anything Android PC. I'm buying maybe a Chromebook, but everything is Apple. So I just think that I think it's beautiful to see this transition of like, you know, the kit where it was all about tinkering with your computing experience as a technologist. And now that's translated into, look at all the cool things you can do with all your Apple products. It's a whole suite now of products, but it's not as technical as it once was before. It's more so just a union of products. So this one tripped me out. I thought it was really cool, but I think what this can shed light on is, you know, your MVP is so important. It's important because it's not just getting people to understand what you're trying to create, but it also is the core of your brand and how your product is going to expand. Another Jerry said, I'm with you, everything in one place. Yeah, Apple centralizes everything. Apple all day. So any questions? Any questions thus far? Any questions before I get into how to build an MVP? Any questions about the importance of building MVP? I'll take that as a no because I don't see anybody raising their hands. All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes. So how to build an MVP. How to build an MVP. Love, yeah, right. She was a beautiful young lady. Yeah, she was meditating. I try to spread as much peace through what I'm doing because navigating tech can be very challenging. So that is at the core of We Are Tech's brand. Like, we want to help people navigate tech. And more importantly, I also like to make people of color visible. Like, I want us to be as visible as possible in the tech space. So how to build an MVP. I have highlighted 4 steps, and I will elaborate on these 4 steps. First, you must envision, and I don't know if I spelled envision wrong. You guys can check me, let me know in the chat. But envision and draft a sketch of what you're creating. Identify a platform or materials to create with. Step 3, rapidly prototype what you want to create. Step 4, put your product in people's hands to collect feedback. And then step 5 is repeat steps 1 through 4 until you validate your learning, until you are able to validate your learning to unearth what your MVP actually needs to be. Just keep doing it. It's such a process. A lot of people think like once they made it, they're like, okay, I got it. No. Even Facebook is still making new products to this day. It's an ongoing process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you know, you build, it's like a muscle. It really is like a muscle. Like ideation and product development, it is a muscle. Like the drawing part, the part where you are able to pull from resources. So doing that research of finding resources, doing research on the community you're trying to serve, and then actually making it. It's all muscles. It's all muscle building. So let's dive in. And again, you'll be able to get these slides at the end of the presentation. I'll share out a link where you can sign up to receive the link. So before I dive deeper into these 4 steps, here are some things you should know or be mindful of before building your MVP. So first things first, know your community. Know the community your product is intended to serve. That is like the easiest, in my opinion, that's like one of the easiest ways to get into, you know, successful entrepreneurship. Really be embedded into a community so that you have insights. Because if you're creating, it's kind of like, when we talk about how brands can be tone deaf sometimes when they put out a commercial and you're just like, this doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, it's targeting me, but it's not engaging me. It's the same thing for entrepreneurship. Like, it's way smarter to know the community that you're trying to serve in order to build products. And you'll find that it'll save you a lot of time because you'll know what they need. You'll have the relationships with people so that you can quickly put the product in people's hands. And you'll find that your research becomes more fluid. You're not, as rigid trying to, sit people down, and, it'll be very fluid where you can be doing research in a conversation, all because you're embedded in that community. And someone touched on this in the first workshop, actually. Second point, understand the phases of product development. So I touched on earlier what those phases are, like ideation, research, prototyping, sourcing, commercialization, launching, which is part of like costing. You really want to understand the phases. And you can Google, phases of product development. You could Google these terms, and there will be different answers. There will be different articles that maybe have like 5 phases listed out or 6 phases listed out. But it's really smart to, understand the phases so that you can be intentional. Intention is everything. Like, you want to be as intentional as possible. So you really want to understand those phases so that you can gauge, where you are and be intentional about where you're trying to go with your product development. Next, do your market research. And that kind of ties in with the first bullet of knowing the community that you want your product to serve. Like, really do your market research. Get on the databases, those resource databases that have a lot of references, a lot of articles and things that you can reference. I think that was at the core of my entrepreneurial journey. Just doing a lot of market research to understand, like, what's going on? Like, what is this space that I'm trying to address? What does it really need? Like, if I'm trying to create a product for the health industry, what does the health industry need right now? Thank you, Iman. I think it's Iman. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but thank you, Iman, for sharing that free library.
It's Eamon.
Eamon? Okay, thank you, Eamon. Thank you, Eamon, for sharing that free library link. That's a good start. I'm gonna sound like a nerd when I say this, but I've always been really close to my librarians in school. So, but librarians taught me how to do research. They taught me how to get on these websites and find articles and siphon through them and filter them. So yeah, do your research. And last, identify a target milestone to inform your development strategy. So what I mean by that is just, again, be intentional about what it is you're trying to get out of this. Like, are you trying to put this in front of people so that you can see what they want? Are you trying to put what you're building in front of people so that you can identify how much it costs, how much it costs to make it, or how much they'd be willing to pay for it? Just be very, just give yourself a target. And the target doesn't need to be right. There's no right or wrong. It's all about intent. So go into your development process with a high intention, and everything will, fall into place from there. All right. So the first step, envision and draft a sketch of what you want to build and write down what you want it to do. So I think, I'm pretty sure you guys, everybody's entrepreneurs here. So I'm sure everybody has done this. They've done something like this where they're like, you know what? I want to make something and I think it should look like this. I think I want it to do this. Pretty sure we've all done this. But what I want to touch on here is your MVP should not have every bell and whistle. It should not have every bell and whistle. Like, it should have, when you think about what you want it to do, it should have like one core feature, 1 to 3 core things that it should do. It should not have everything you want it to do. Just 1 to 3. Really try to keep it simple, because once you put it in somebody's hands, you don't want to have to explain to people how your product works when it's in their hands. One thing I learned is that if you could put it in a 6-year-old's hands and they could kind of fumble around with it, or if you could say what your product is to a 6-year-old and they're like, okay, Like that's good. Yeah, KISS. Yep. Keep it simple. Yes, keep it simple. Keep it very, very simple. Like 1 to 3. Rule of thumb is 1 to 3. Rule of thumb is 1 to 3. Do not put the whole kitchen sink in your MVP. So when you think about what you wanted to do, 1 to 3. And I don't know if anybody has a question on this yet, but how do you determine what are those 1 to 3 things? Has anybody ever wondered that? Anybody at all? Have you ever wondered, like, what should these 1 to 3 things be? Yeah, right. What I can say to that is, how do you determine? You kind of like, it's kind of chicken and the egg. Like, you could make something. Yeah, the primary functions, exactly. You could make something and put it in people's hands to determine, is this the primary function? Or you could double down on the ideation process. Exactly, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Like, keep that at the core, the problem, and how is your product the solution? Like, how is your product the solution to that problem you're trying to solve? Or how is your product meeting the need of that market opportunity that you did research on? That's going to determine what are the primary functions. It's going to determine, okay, I know that this market needs this. Okay, what is this thing? How would this thing that it needs function? Where should I start with the different functions within that? Let's start with this because this is the simplest thing to make and it kind of encompasses everything, or it's a good starting point. That's how you got to start like thinking through when you're going through this ideation process. Zave said, and is your solution unique, doable, affordable, and usable? Yes, usable being the key word. Usable being the key word, because I think what happens with entrepreneurs, and I've done this a lot, especially starting out, we'll know what the product does because we made it. And we'll assume that once we put it in somebody's hands, they should know, or they should know. No, they're not going to know because they didn't think of it. So really, really keep it simple. Don't have a lot of buttons if you're making an app. Really try to keep it simple. All right. So the next thing, after you've doubled down on that ideation and you got to the core of those primary functions that you want to create, you're like, you know what? I want to make this one thing with this feature, and I want it to do this. I want it to look like this, and I want it to function in this way. Now you have to identify the platform or the materials that you're going to use to rapidly prototype. Keyword being rapidly. Make it quickly. Be swift. Don't sit on things for too long. Even if it's not perfect, put it in somebody's hands, your kids' hands, your spouse's hands, your coworkers' hands. Start with the people around you. Build swiftly and put it in their hands. But in order to get it in people's hands, you got to build it. So I'm more of a software person. So I shared some logos down here that are platforms that I've used before, except I have not used Vectory. And I think someone, let me see, in the chat, touched on, it might have been Nefertari, I'm not sure, touched on like physical products. So Vectory, if you look at the this logo here, Vectory is a 3D design platform that you can use. If you're trying to create a physical product, you can design it on Vectory and then, keep the cost low. One of the entrepreneurs, I forgot who it was, Mr. Webster, but one of the entrepreneurs on the first workshop, she shared that she bought, instead of investing in, all these supplies, she invested in a 3D printer. So if you're making,
Jesse Garcia from Tizuto.
yes. So if you're making a physical product, 3D printing can be a really good 3D printing and 3D design can be a really, really good skill set and resource for you. So going back to, embracing the process, if you want to make a physical product or have some type of manufacturing business, 3D design is going to be a skill that you are going to want to know in and out. You don't need to be the expert on it, but you're at least going to want to have some basic skills in it, because eventually down the line, when you're bossed up, you're going to have to hire, those designers. You're going to have to hire and contract those manufacturers, and you're going to want to know the ins and outs of what the curvature of your design, you're going to want to be at the foundation of that. So Vectory is a good 3D design platform that you can use and then, invest in a 3D printer. Webflow is for web design and it's a no code platform. So I think this kind of relates back to Yahoo and Facebook. All of these apps, they didn't really start on heavy code. Like they kind of did because back then there weren't a bunch of platforms like these where you could just make you can make a design and you can make it actually clickable. Like there were half the products that are out now for prototyping and web development, app development, 3D design. These platforms were not out 10 years ago, let alone 20, So Webflow, if you could easily make a website that, where you could start receiving information from people. Squarespace is good for that too. You can make a website, make a survey, and then it could be a sign up list for people to, sign up for your product or, give you feedback on what your concept is, like you really want to be very scrappy and be very, very minimal. So these two platforms right here on the bottom left, we have Proto Io and we have Adalo. I love Adalo. Adalo, I actually used Adalo to make that crowdfunding app that I shared at the beginning of the presentation. Adalo is a platform where you can instantly make an app, like for real. Please write it down, Adalo, Adalo. One of my students put me onto it. And with this app, you can, hold on, Terry, you said I'm a baker. I'm gonna touch on that in a moment. But yeah, you can legitimately, make a whole app with Adalo. The buttons click, you could store a database on there so you can collect and store user information. You can automate messaging. You can program messaging into apps. So if you're trying to make something that has chat, Adalo is the way to go. Adalo is the way to go for real. You can quickly make something and put it in people's hands with Adalo. Proto Io is also another prototyping app for, web and app development. However, Proto Io doesn't allow you to actually collect data. It's more so an app where you can create the interface. So you can design wireframes and then you can make buttons clickable so that people can navigate your app, but it doesn't collect data. Like it doesn't make a real live app. Now, Adalo, another thing with Adalo, you can launch apps onto the App Store with Adalo too. So not only does it collect data and repurpose data, and it also, you can also put it on the App Store. So these are, the resources, just a few of the resources that I know of. And I will make sure that you guys have my information. So if you ever want to pick my brain or ask me about more platforms, I'm down to help you do the research. Because again, the process, having committed to this process, I've built a muscle for being able to find what I'm looking for when it comes to finding resources to build. So I want to encourage you guys, you can start with these and, go from there. Maybe you could find the alternatives to these if you don't like these platforms. Nefertiti said, I'm a baker. What type of information can you share? What do you mean by that? Can you unmute for me? In the chat, Nefertiti. And I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I don't know. Should I wait to the end? You want me to just wait to the end to revisit that question?
Right. Yeah, that's fine.
It's hard to, okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she found it.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, you know how it is. It's kind of hard to find these buttons. But yeah, so what it is that everyone else's platform is more about technology. So I wanted to know when it comes to a physical product of like a pie, all right, what type of information can you share to help me? I'm trying to, okay, it's like an apple and an orange type situation. So I'm having a hard time trying to explain it, but it's more, again, by me being a baker and I have a product.
Yes.
To me, it's a difference from websites to Yahoo and Amazon. So it's a different product. So do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely, yeah, I get it.
Okay.
It comes down to, so I guess if you're talking about like a tangible good, like food, you know, you have to determine how you want your food to taste, you know, how you want it to taste and what other people think, you know. And the thing with food though, everybody can eat your food. There's, you know, like there's not one type of consumer for a food product. So that's a good thing. You could have everybody, you know, taste your food. One thing I guess it's different now because of COVID, but yeah, Hakeem says reach out to the chef community. Yeah, definitely reach out to the chef community. They'll be able to let you know like how to go about launching food products. But yeah, just I think it comes down to the recipe. You know, start baking what you think it's going to be, and also start being innovative about like the model. You know, like is it going to be, you know, mini pies? Is that what your product should be? Should it be whole big pies? Like should it be little snack size ones? Like I would experiment with that. And the only thing that sucks with COVID, I think farmers markets are the perfect place to do stuff like that. Like farmers markets are a perfect place to just pop up. You know, you spend like maybe $500 on a booth and you pop up and you just start sampling, you know, like I think that when food, it's more so the model. Like it's the model and the recipe. Is it good? Are people going to eat it? But then also the model behind it. What is going to work for me in terms of producing this at mass, and what are people gravitating to in terms of what they favor with the type of food that I'm making. All right, winning product, yes. Adjust as you sell. Do samples in grocery stores. I like that idea. I love the startup community because we all just, you know, we collaborate. It's all about collaboration. All right. Shelly says, do you need a website to better sell more of your food, or what's the goal? What's the goal right now? Oh yeah, that's a good question. I think that's a question for Nefertari. I really hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, but
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? It's Nefertari. It's
Nefertari.
Nefertari. Yes, yes. Actually, the website is under. I'm actually making the website right now as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm at the point whereas I'm ready to put the pies on the market.
Okay.
They've actually won in a contest 5 years straight, and also been featured at the art museum at the Perlman Center. And yes, we do ship pies.
Oh yeah. Well, it sounds like you've already. I think in terms of MVP now,
Mm-hmm.
it's coming up with the model that's going to be sustainable for you. Like if you don't already have that, because it sounds like it. You win in competitions, you got a winning recipe. I think next is like the model of, you know, your distribution, you know, like how do you do this at scale? Since you're going to have a site, that means when you have a website, your business is automatically global. It's no longer local. It's no, you know, like your business is global. So really think about, you know, really think about your model for distribution and think about like, okay, I have this site up, everybody can see it, but like, do I only want to sell locally? Maybe is my model selling to grocery stores? Like, can I sustain that? Is my, you know, model selling to, local shops like Poppy stores? Like what is your model? Like, I think that's I think going to be your next like MVP step, like figuring out your packaging, your distribution, and figuring out, is this sustainable? Is this something I can maintain?
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Let's see. It says send pies to the Philly media networks to get noticed. Yes, Andrea, that is smart. Yes, and they'll talk about it on the news. Yes.
Hey, Brittany,
Yes.
you have 5 minutes.
What? Oh my goodness. Oh, it happened. You told me this was gonna happen.
Yeah. But but keep going, and just
All
make
right.
sure you cover everything you want to be able to share.
All right, I'm gonna speed it up. All right, so let's see.
Take your time. I think Amy will give us a few more minutes. He runs the startup roundtable next.
Okay. Can people come back for a second round? Dave says, I would be down for that. Okay, so step 3, build your prototype. And I think we've talked about this quite a few times, and I've mentioned like just make sure it has 1 to 3 features, 1 to 3. And even, Nefertari, when you're looking at food, like keep it simple. Like maybe your MVP is the processes, you know. Maybe you don't want 10 steps in your pie, you know, delivery business, or 10 steps in the packaging of it. Maybe it's more viable for you to only have 2 steps in it, where you just put the pie in the box, put a sticker on it, and you call it a day, you know? So, you know, keep it simple, and move swiftly, You know, the earth is moving underneath our feet, you know, so keep it pushing. What is the step 4? Get your feedback, put it in people's hands. Do not be afraid to put your product in people's hands. I think that's honestly one of the most important steps. Like, and don't be afraid to receive feedback either, you know, and also don't only hear what you want to hear, you know. Do not only hear what you want to hear, and don't only capture information to validate what you want to know or what you want to think. Do not do that. That is the Achilles heel of being an entrepreneur. Like, get out, you got to stay out of your own way. You have to stay out of your own way. So let's see what else we have in here. Alrighty. So step 5, repeat steps 1 through 4. And again, that validated learning piece. Please purchase, focus on strengthening your weaknesses. I like that. Hakeem said that in the chat. Oh, good. So I can actually end here. So now that you have your MVP, what are you going to do with it? This is important. Once you have your MVP, you have a lot of options. Like, now you're ready. Now you're ready. You can show it as a proof of concept. You know, you can present what you know about your product. And from my experience, that is like the most important thing with investors. It doesn't, like, yeah, they're going to be like, okay, what's the market opportunity? How much money are you telling me you're going to make? But how well do you know your business? How well do you know your business? That is what I've noticed investors highly look for. And it's mainly in the cost. If you're asking me for $1 million, but I know this industry way better than you, and I know what you're telling me that you're creating really can be maintained for $500,000, I can't be in business with you because you don't really know your business. So, you know, having an MVP, it allows you to present what you know about your business, and it empowers you to present with confidence, a proof of your concept, the traction, meaning like how much people gravitated to it, how many people used it, how much people value it. And this process of pitching your idea, it allows you to effectively present how what you built addresses that market opportunity. So again, going back to being strategic, you want to make sure you do that research to understand what you need to build and why, so that when you build it, you can turn around and say, hey, this is my understanding of this market opportunity. Here's what I did about it. Here's how this solution addresses that market opportunity. And when we did what we did to address this market opportunity, here's what we know more now. Here's what we know about this. There's more information that we have. And here's how we want to move forward. And the investor is going to be like, oh, okay, you know your stuff. All right, cool. So, so let's see. I guess we won't touch on any more questions because we only have like 5 more minutes. What do you think, Mr. Webster?
If you could drop your contact information in the chat, that's the next question.
All right.
I think we're going to need to wrap right now. Eamon, are we good?
You tell me,
I'll speak
Tom.
for Eamon.
You're running the show.
Okay. Well, right now what I want to do is, Brittany, go ahead and do your recap.
Okay. All right. So I'll do, the recap, and then I have just one slide so that you guys can kind of know how to keep up with me. So key takeaways: trim the fat. I know it's COVID, everybody's at home eating bread all day, you know, but trim the fat. So, oh no, my share screen came off. No, where is it? There we go. Trim the fat. Products should only have 1 to 3 features. I don't know where it went. There we go. So trim the fat. Keep your MVP at 1 to 3. Do not make your MVP include everything. Only 1 to 3. Rapidly prototype early and often, okay? Do not wait for your product to be perfect in order to start prototyping it. Make it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all about what you want, what you envision. Make it, put it out there, put it in somebody's hands. And I'm guarantee you it's going to build your confidence. Like all those things you're concerned about, it's just gonna go out the window because you've done it, and you'll build on that confidence. Validated learning, it enhances your productivity. Why? Because you now have information that validates what you did before so that you can have a better understanding moving forward. And the last few things I can leave you with are some words of encouragement. Stay gritty, stay scrappy, stay focused, embrace failure. Embrace failure. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to fail in order to know what to do that's going to work. So embrace failure and the growth that comes with it. And this one is my favorite one because especially as a woman of color, like there are a lot of people who, in my personal experience, have tried to talk me out of my value. So I just want everybody to know you have intrinsic value and what you envision and build is of value. I'm a firm believer that we are all on this earth with, a unique offering. Like we're all different. The one thing that we all have in common as human beings is that we're all different, which means we all have something different to offer. So please believe in your intrinsic value and remember that you are of value and don't let anyone tell you any different. So that's my last tidbit. Thank you so much for attending this workshop. If you would like this presentation, please go to wearetech.education/FWRD. So on this We Are Tech website, you'll learn more about my business and you'll also, you'll be able to explore like all the things that we're doing. So we're seeking to launch an app called Forward this coming fall. It's going to be a digital literacy resource app. We predominantly, I'm gonna forward the link. Oh, thank you so much, Natalie. I was actually about to scramble and try to get the link, so thank you. But so tech education is at our core, and we focus mainly on families and students and educators. But now that I'm doing more things like this, I also want to incorporate that startup community content where I can empower people with the information that has empowered me. So there will be a section in there for founders where I include how-tos for, getting press, creating your prototype, funding, all that good stuff will be in the Forward app in a little mini section for founders. So I just ask that you guys sign up to be an early adopter of Forward, and then I will send you the link to this presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brittany. Nat, if you can stop screen share before we pass over to Startup Roundtable. I want to wrap up this evening by, first of all, thanking Brittany for phenomenal presentations. I just see by the responses we're getting in that everybody has enjoyed this week's workshop. It's been a pleasure of mine to be able to convene today's workshop with Brittany as our subject matter experts on MVP. A couple of nuggets I want to share with you that I took away from her presentation tonight, which I loved. Several things that jumped out to me is that the process is a confidence builder. Indeed, if you're going to go this journey as an entrepreneur, if you're going to seek this road, go down this road as a founder, the first thing you have to do is have confidence in yourself. So don't be afraid to fail. We all do. I failed many times in my 40-year journey in business. But the only difference between winners and losers is that winners get back up. Second, got to be intentional. That doesn't happen without us really putting forward and believing in what we're doing. We have to be intentional in believing that we want to do. The whole point of tonight's poll was to really get a sense of everybody's motivation. And I'm going to ask Nat to share the results from the poll before we jump off. Got to do your market research. Something that was shared in last week's workshop is the library as a resource. I know we've grown fond of Mr. Google, and the library has fallen by the wayside, but Philadelphia has an amazing library on the Parkway and with an amazing resource section. And those librarians down there are a wealth of information. I still use it to research business opportunities that I'm looking to invest in. MVP, He said 3 core features. She hammered at home eloquently tonight, very important. And also too, another takeaway, validated learning. From your research, knowing how to validate your learning, to use that information and that data collected to improve your process, look at your performance, and really develop how you measure how to go forward and progressing your business venture. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us tonight here on OnRamp in our second workshop. See you next week where we get into financial modeling. And following us tonight, we have Startup Roundtable with 2 of my favorite colleagues in the startup community, Eamon Gallagher and his honor, Aaron Sarasta.